have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host Coale, and with me as always I have my good friend and co-host Aaron.
Hello!
Hello! Woo! We made it!
It's the two of us.
Yes, absolutely. Just the two of us.
just
We can
the
make it
two
if we
of us.
can make it if we try.
We might make it.
Yes. I don't know. We might make it or might not make it. But yeah, how you feeling, bruh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. You ready to go back to the past?
Oh yeah, Samurai Jack, I am.
Whatcha?
Yeah, we're not wielding swords this times, but chainsaws on hands. I'm
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. So, for those that haven't watched the previous films, obviously we are going to be talking about, stuff that happens towards the end of the Evil Dead movie. So, if you don't want to get spoiled, this is obviously the time you probably
Go watch
should.
those movies.
Yes,
Go
absolutely.
listen to our podcast.
Yes, I'm going to
about
tag
those
them right
movies.
here, just like
Embedded
and
right here. He's just
so
pointing.
good. Yeah, right there. Just. Okay, so Aaron,
Yeah.
how are you feeling about the episode focusing on the third entry and the final theatrical release that is of the Evil Dead
Evil.
franchise before they came out with the remake later?
The Evil Dead. Man, I'm excited. This one is the one that looks cool because, okay, last warning for spoiler alert if you haven't seen the other movies. This is the part where he's in the past and it's he's got a chainsaw and he's gonna destroy the original evil or whatever. There's some progression in this story, and I think this series has a lot of charm and funniness to it. So I'm looking forward to a good campy time with Bruce Campbell and cutting up some fellers. I don't know. I think it's gonna be funny.
Absolutely. And do you have any any notion of anything that comes from Army of Darkness, like anything you're aware of or anything? Or are you kind of going in blind, just what you got left off with in Evil Dead 2?
Yeah, pretty blind. Just here with the context given in Evil Dead 2. I mean, as you guys know, Evil Dead 1 doesn't even really give me any context because Evil Dead 2 is just Evil Dead 1 again,
Yes.
So, yeah, really just one movie of context for what's going to happen, and the box art or whatever for the movie. But I think it's, if I had to give some predictions that can then be humorously wrong later, I'm guessing we're going to be in the past the whole time. I'm guessing he's going to cut the head off of some possessed Roman soldier. Huzzah! That's all I can predict.
No, I appreciate your predictions. Your predictions are always fun, especially to how they compare once you actually see the movie.
Yeah.
For me, whenever it comes to experience with Army of Darkness, I definitely heard a few quotes from the movie said multiple times there, which prompted me to want to watch it. And you were mentioning the cool box art, the movie poster is just I'm just going to be straight up honest. It's one of my favorite movie posters ever. I just love how it looks there. I'll even pull it up here for context so we can even admire. But just seeing Bruce Campbell as Ash, just there with his shirt ripped open,
fucking 8-pack, huge pecs, He-Man looking ass with his ripped jeans and chainsaw hand, some busty broad at his leg, and an army of darkness below him. I mean, what's not to love?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm surprised I haven't already gotten a movie poster to put up in my house yet. I need to get around to that because it's just one of my favorites, and I know I'm probably giving stuff away, but I seriously cannot contain my excitement. But the only caveat is I hope I'm not hyping it up to where you're just there. But there's only one way to find out, so we're gonna be right back whenever we watch Evil Dead Army of Darkness.
Yeah, turn off the lights. This is an army of darkness.
It's so
Hello,
dark.
Mr. Fancy Pants. Jack shit. Hello, Mr. Fancy Pants. Stack left down.
Whoa, wait a minute. You gotta understand, man. I never even saw these assholes before.
Name's Ash. Housewares.
And we are back to the present after watching Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
Aaron,
Uh-huh.
how was your trip? How was the
Man.
trip?
A goofy ass movie. An extremely goofy movie, you know. It was a gorish ass movie, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the camp is definitely amped up to 11. It basically broke the knob off the system.
Yeah, I felt like Evil Dead 2 was like, this is kind of their goofy demons, and there's some campy dialogue, and, you know, some of it was intentional, and some of it was just how it goes, you know. This one, they were just like, yeah, every moment has to be the goofiest shit.
Yeah. A lot of people, it can set people off because a lot of people, from what I've heard, like really like 2 over 3, because 3 definitely goes harder on the comedy than it does the horror, as opposed to Evil Dead 2, which is an evil mix of both.
Right.
There. But for me, I love me some goofy stuff. I feel like this film was made for me, just like my level of humor and just how over the top goofy it is. So just watching it, it's just like one of those things I'm like, yeah, I just never get tired of it.
Yeah.
Never get tired.
You can never not have goofy skeletons when you have skeletons.
Yes.
These skeletons are like, whoa, rattle my bones, you know, kind of guys.
Yeah, it just is it's a good time. So we'll go ahead and jump into the plot of Army of Darkness. So this film takes place immediately after the events of Evil Dead 2, whenever Ash is sucked in through a portal and is sent back to the year 1300, where basically a lot of people aren't sure who he is until he proves himself that he is the chosen one that was foretold to save the kingdom from this army of darkness. And so basically, whenever they ask him to help, he agrees with the accordance that he is also sent back to the present. And from there, his journey shoots off there. And like I said, the wacky times just are rolling as soon as the movie starts. It's just pretty much, it takes the gloves off immediately. And he's like, huh, I'm going to mess you up.
Yeah. Yeah, Gorsh Mickey, for sure.
I mean, pretty much narrative-wise, it's as straight as you can get. It doesn't really pull any, like, special, like, twist or anything. It's just pretty much straightforward, like, yep, this is the kind of movie we're going through. There's a couple of twists, but even then, admittedly, it's one of those things that, you know, story-wise, I can't pretend it's anything amazing, but I didn't need it to, because again, all the goofy moments and stuff, again, I'm not with this film. It's okay, it doesn't have like a deeply complex plot and characters. It's just a really fun time.
I agree, yeah. I think a simple plot actually services what the movie wants to do pretty well, because not only does it help that you could just kind of focus on the gags and the goofs without having to think too hard about, like, ooh, what's this person's motivation or whatever. It's, you know, they're doing goofy one-liners and shooting skeletons with shotguns. Like, you don't need to be thinking that hard. They don't want you to be thinking that hard. They want you to be laughing. But also, I mean, it's like a classic medieval tale in a way. It's not super complicated because it emulates the hero of lore, and, you know, he gets to go fight evil and save the princess, and, you know, it's so, like, they're just kind of riffing on that too at the same time. Which I thought was a great idea for a comedy film. Was just like, what if somebody that worked at a hardware store in the current age was sent back to the past to fight the undead? He was like, yeah, he would, you know, with his Corvette or whatever,
Yeah,
shotgun. It's just it's hilarity ensues because he doesn't do anything normally. He punches skeletons in the head and this is my boomstick, and all that. So, which is funny. I had heard that line before. I didn't realize that this was the movie it was from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things that we could definitely talk about. The script is so punchy with so much of the dialogue, but that, in part, is really, again, like, all the script, I mean, really, if we're being honest, was focused solely on Ash.
Mm-hmm.
Ash just saying these one-liners. Because, again, it's like he has gone through this evolution as a character, and I guess we'll go ahead and talk about characters since we're here. But it's like in the first film, he's fairly quiet, just trying to be the straight man, not even like the main central hero. He's just dude trying his best. Second one, it's an even mix of trying to be serious, but also being over the top. It's like, I know you mentioned during our Evil Dead 2 review, you're like, I didn't know it was goofy until they explicitly started doing goofy stuff there, but it was an even mix. From the get-go, I mean, he's just popping up like one-liners, and that's the one thing that, even though people like 2 over Army of Darkness, they love the dialogue. They love the lines, and pretty much every line that comes out of Ash's mouth is gold. Like, that they were just like, oh yeah, this is good, campy gold.
And it's definitely a lot in the delivery. It feels a lot like a Jim Carrey comedy, like early Jim Carrey comedy. Not just because it's super eccentric and he's delivering goofy one-liners, but also like he's the giant goofball and everyone around him is normal. There's no like secondary gag character. It's like him. He's like, oh, you, and everybody's just like, my lord, yeah, okay, like.
Yeah, for the most part, and I never really noticed that. Everybody's pretty dadgum straight-laced, except for Ash. He's this big egomaniac who's completely crazed.
It's like Ace Ventura was sent back in time to kill the Army of the Dead. He's like, hey, you!
So whenever it comes to the interpretation of Ash going even further with the goofiness, are you yay or nay for it?
I mean, I think I'm a mix. I'm like, yay. I like the movie for what it is. I like Ash's character as a big goofball, especially as the dead sort of drives him crazy and he becomes more, involved with these Necronomicon creatures. He becomes a little bit more like them. And there's even a scene where he's sort of fighting himself. So I feel like it's appropriate, and it's also just really funny. But there is a part of me that's like, I really liked what Evil Dead 1 and 2 was going for as far as like the feel of it. And like, I do feel like they kind of sacrificed all of the horror just to do the comedy, But,
I think that's definitely a strong point there, and one of the reasons why, whenever people do say like, oh, I like 2 better than Army of Darkness, I'm like, I get it. I get it. It's just one of those things for me. I think it just comes down to personal taste there that, whenever it comes to this sort of like narrative, while I do really like Evil Dead 2 and just how it mixes horror and comedy just perfectly, it's like a perfect mix there. I mean, this comedy here is just one of my favorites. It's just always gets me to laugh. It always is just a fun, nice time to relax to. It's just like something I could watch endlessly there and just enjoy there. And again, it's because of Bruce Campbell's like pure charisma, especially. Like, he's just amping it up, and I think he's able to do so because, in Evil Dead 2 especially, he spent a majority of the time alone, so it's just him kind of being quiet because he's not going to yell. But this time, I mean, he's just like bopping off the one-liners and just going off on everything, just pretty much not taking any sort of crap from anybody there. And it's just a funny, good time. And again, it just has so many memorable lines. That's one of my favorite things, is just how quotable this film is.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like they were able to do that with the dialogue because they knew that, no line was going to be taken that seriously.
Yes.
So they were like, all right, just anytime Ash says something, we're going to write it in the goofiest way possible, in like the weirdest, like, antagonistic way possible.
Yeah.
And just to give him a chance to say I feel like every line he delivered, he was like moving his jaw horizontally back and forth, like, you got real ugly, just
Yeah,
Like he was just supposed to be this machismo man, and that's exactly how they paint him on the movie poster. So it's great. He's like sort of a spoof of a hero while being exactly that guy. But...
Yeah, it's funny because again, whenever it comes to it, like he's basically a dick to everybody. Granted, they weren't really the nicest to him whenever he first arrived, but he is. And also, he is a lot more dumber.
Yeah.
There. But I love that. I just love kind of like that meathead, sort of just like wisecracking sort of protagonist.
Yeah.
And I feel like this film just makes him stand out as an iconic character in just film in general. So I think... Well, I think while I agree that maybe the like good artistic value was like a lot better in Evil Dead 2, I feel like Evil Dead Army of Darkness just has the quintessential Ash. Like everything just came to fruition, all the ideas and everything to sculpt him into this being that's now like super iconic. So I give nothing but major kudos to Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell for just being able to come up with what Ashley J. Williams would become in the cinematic world. I know I could keep gushing on and on about Bruce Campbell, but I will jump over to the few characters, and I won't go over everybody because, like Aaron mentioned, everyone else is pretty straight-laced. They're not really playing stuff up for laughs there, and so really there's only, like, I would say 4, maybe 5 characters, even then that's kind of being generous, that are present in the film. One of them is Sheila, played by Mbeth Davidson, and again, I feel like the script was focused solely on Ash, that it didn't really leave anything else for the rest of the cast. So it's like one of those weird sacrifices that, yes, I think they like made absolute perfection with Ash, but everybody else kind of got screwed in the writing department. Because I feel like Sheila's just the typical, love interest, damsel in distress sort of gal. And, nothing's wrong with that. I feel like if the film was really trying to focus on like other characters being like really deep and everything else, then I think it would have definitely failed in some departments. So I think with them just being basically cardboard cutters to help Ash move forward with the film, because he's the star. He's the whole thing the story revolves around.
Right.
But I mean, for overall what she does, I mean, I feel like she does perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, I agree. She's given kind of, I don't even feel bad spoiling this because it lasts for like 2 minutes. She's given like an enemies to lovers arc that happens like quicker than I've ever seen it happen.
Oh, dude, yeah, they pretty much just streamline that bad boy.
Like literally, there's one scene where she starts as enemy and then ends as lover in like 30 seconds. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely very streamlined whenever it comes to like decisions there. That's why I think like with the script, like the words are like very punchy for Ash, but whenever it comes to story stuff, they very much jump immediately.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, let's just get to this point. Let's not BS around and just let's jump to it. So it feels highly unnatural, but again, whenever you're watching this film, I mean, you're kind of belief like, oh, this wouldn't happen in real life. It's just out the window.
You definitely suspend all your disbelief. But yeah. I mean, I think she does a good job. But I feel like I could say the same about everybody. They are definitely given caricatures of medieval people. She is sort of the damsel in distress, the lady. Then there's the captain guy.
Yes, Lord Arthur,
Lord
played
of the
by
castle.
Marcus Gilbert.
Yeah.
Who's a very much serious, stoic type.
Who commands the army.
Yeah.
The good guys.
Very general-esque. And then there's the wise man.
Yeah, he's like the wizard, but they don't say wizard for some reason. He's the wise man.
Yeah, which is played by Ian Abercrombie. And again, he does the job just fine. I mean, he seems like, again, the court magician, as it were.
Yeah.
Basically, who's the one who's like, wait, this might be the one they foretold us of. And of course, Lord Arthur's like, what? Are you kidding me? This buffoon?
This guy looks like somebody from the enemy. We're gonna hang him.
Yes, specifically the enemy of Duke Henry the Red.
Ah, yes, because of his red hair. 'Cause he's Scottish.
Yes, played by Richard Grove, which again, he's just kind of like, again, the enemy of Lord Arthur. Again,
Yeah.
kind of more bombastic, you know. I
Right.
mean, it feels like the same character you see where they have like people that feud with one another, like that Lumiere Cogsworth sort of thing. Like you have like the
Sure.
tall, skinny person and then the kind of shorter, stouter one.
Mhm.
But again, like they do their jobs just fine, so you never get distracted by like, oh, this
Right.
character's awful. It's
No.
just it's doing what the script requires them to do, which I
Sure.
think is definitely a good strength that they just weren't going to try to BS us with
No, I agree.
other characters.
Because
It's
this whole
basically
movie-
the Ash movie.
Yeah, because the whole movie is goofy Ash movie, and all the characters pretty much serve as background.
Mhm.
But it's cool. It's fine. They do a good job, and they're memorable in context to Ash. So
Yes, definitely. They're memorable enough to where you remember, like, oh yeah, I know this guy. Like, you might
Right.
not remember their name, but you know what they did. One of the characters that I find super funny that I felt like they had a big emphasis on was the blacksmith that's like
Oh,
bald
yeah.
with the long mustache.
Mhm.
Like, he's always staring at Ash longingly, even whenever he's dragged in as a
Mhm.
prisoner. Like, but he's given zero dialogue. But
Yeah.
again, he's always there, like, always been backing Ash. And it's like one of those things, like, again, literally given nothing there, but you remember him.
yeah. I couldn't tell you his name, but
Yes, he's just called blacksmith.
it's just like
yeah.
he wasn't even given a name. But yes, he is. And somewhat important to the plot later too, I guess. Somehow
Yes.
he's still just always in the background, just kind of looking up at Ash, like,
Mhm.
I.
One of the funny instances that I know you noticed was whenever they give a quick recap at the beginning of the film of the stuff that happened in Evil Dead 2, they show a Linda, except it's not
It's
any
not-
of the Lindas from 1 or 2.
Yeah, I was like, was this actress in the last movie? And he was like, no.
Yeah, it's like it's practically a joke at this point that there's so many Lindas there, and again, it's just such a minute thing that it just, again, it doesn't matter. It's not like one of those things where if you had really focused hard, like if we had to go through the events again, then it would maybe be a little distracting. But again, we went through the same thing with Evil Dead 2, where
Right.
it's like, okay, this isn't the Linda from the previous film, so
Which I think is funny. Like, if this was like a more serious movie, I would maybe bring up the point that, like, in the he brings up he specifies, like, this, I went to the woods with my girlfriend Linda, and then I got put back to time. And like the very first thing he does is like fall in love with this girl, like as like somebody else. And then Linda's never mentioned to Coale. She's only mentioned at the beginning. Even at the very end, it's like no conflict of Linda.
Oh, one thing I found very interesting is whenever they do the flashback, they don't show all footage of Evil Dead 2. They like reshoot it, which
Yeah.
again, I'm kind of mixed on, because again, I'm like, well, this didn't happen in Evil Dead 2. But again, the whole film is just basically just
Right.
suspend your disbelief, as you say, and just enjoy the ride. But it's weird because they did reuse footage of Evil Dead 2, so
Yeah.
it makes me curious as to why they didn't. Like, maybe they just were worried that, you know, Bruce Campbell wouldn't look the same or something like that.
Maybe.
But it is very interesting, or maybe they just wanted a different style of camera shot, because I know they had a different cinematography for the reshoot for the recap as opposed to the original, because they
Sure.
do like a swooping motion and moving that, so that might also be the reason. But yeah, it's definitely interesting watching it. And again, there are moments like, you know, they do fall in love super quick,
Yeah.
super duper quick, and basically they just jump to these points, which I actually kind of don't mind because I think that's one of the things that annoys me is whenever a film does a cliche and you've seen it so many times, but yet they're like, oh no, yeah, no, it's real. They're not getting back together.
Yeah, whenever they try to build tension for things you've seen so many times, or really build up to some moment, like, oh, the audience is gonna really care that these two get together or whatever. Whenever, So I do like that if you're gonna do a goofy ass movie with a plot like that, you do kind of have to keep shit simple and cliche and just like so that you can present it as like, here's a trope you identify with, and then like we're gonna do a funny one-liner over it and move on. You know what I mean? Because the plot isn't really important so much, or at least those moments are. Yeah, no, so I agree with you. It would be a really stinky movie if it was goofy one-liners and like, oh, will they, won't they? Because like, 'cause I don't care if they do or not. Like, that's not what I'm here for.
No, and I think that's just surprisingly one of the strengths of it is that they know what kind of movie they're making.
Right.
You know, they're not going to try to BS us with like anything. They're just like, yep, we're making this kind of movie here and we're just going forward, which again, this is like one of the first big, picture Sam Raimi made because they was in collaboration with Universal Studios there, so they was like even bigger budget and everything else.
Spent
But
it all on explosives,
dude, I like, can we just talk about the practical effects? I love how much of the practical effects are. Granted, like, it's one of those things, especially watching it on the 4K edition that I got, you're able to see a lot of the wires literally there and the ways they're able to do it. But just the fact it's so many practical effects, it's just, it ages so wonderfully. It's just so good, and I love how much effort is put into it, just both like makeup wise, practical effect wise. And again, they do a lot of like really impressive effects for the time, and even though now you're able to see like, okay, they're clearly in front of a green screen here, or they have other like doubles moving in, like you're able to see how they do it. I remember watching it the first time like on DVD where the quality was definitely way less, and it was just like mind-blowing like how they were able to do this before, just seeing kind of like now like, okay, I could see where the green screen is wavering right there. It's just impressive. And like Aaron mentioned, the amount of skeletons and explosions is incredible. And like I said, it's like, I think, didn't you say this, that you can't go wrong with like screaming skeletons that then explode?
Yeah, that's just so goofy, and that's why I think practical effects were definitely age well here, is because it's a goofy ass movie, and so you have like rattling skeleton puppets that explode, and it's like, that's just funny.
Yeah, it's just pure comedy that never gets old, for us. And I love the mix of like effects they did, because sometimes it would be puppets, other times it'd be stop motion. It's just, it's great. It's great to see such big creativity going on all fronts there. Because again, Sam Raimi had a much bigger budget to work with, so he's like, okay, I'm working with all this. So that's like another thing I enjoy, is just, and again, like, sometimes they like do stuff like with skeletons, other times they go out of their way to do this crazy freaking looking effect, and how they achieve it, and makeup and everything. It's just so wonderful to enjoy, and it's just always like a good time. Like, I know whenever I pop in Army of Darkness, I'm gonna have a blast watching it. So it's like, again, like, I'm going to be gushing about this film more than criticizing it, but I promise there is like critiques that will pop up later. But like practical effects, it's like one of my favorites. It's just like one of the outstanding uses of it. Another one that I really, really like a ton is the music, which a lot of the music was done by Joseph Loduca, but like the main Dead March, like I think that was done by Danny Elfman. So like, he only did that one song, but it's a banger, dude.
Danny Elfman prints out bangers.
Yes, he's so good. And again, every time I hear it, I just get excited. Like, it's just like, oh, Army of Darkness going on. And of course, I get like the visuals of like the skeletons like playing flutes, bone flutes. It's just,
flutes,
like, and I think that's where you've seen the meme, like, angry duding, there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much fun. It's so much dadgum fun. Surprisingly, one of the things that I noticed with this film, as opposed to others, is that for the most part, the gore is very minimized
Yeah.
comparatively. And I'm sure it has to do because, like, Sam Raimi was dealing with a studio and they said, like, oh, we can't put this out. It has too much blood, so he has to substitute it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like, substituting blood for skeletons is always a plus in my book,
Yeah, when you're going for comedy, skeletons are always funnier than blood.
But yeah, man, I feel like I'm about to start talking about spoilers. I've already like started trickling away there. Was there anything else you wanted to mention before getting into the nitty gritty and talking about spoilers, Aaron?
Sheesh. I don't think so. I mean, I will say, like, the spoilers almost don't even matter as much for this movie because, like, the plot's not as important as so many other films that we watch. So I feel like if there is an episode that you just want to listen to spoilers, even if you haven't seen the movie, this one's fine because, like, I don't think you're gonna miss anything by knowing how it ends. Like,
Yeah.
there are some moments that, like, you maybe are better off. Just some funny moments that maybe you should watch the movie first, just to witness for yourself before you hear us rehash them poorly. But I mean, yeah, as far as like plot goes, like, man, I could tell you the summary in 20 seconds, and you're not gonna, it's not gonna ruin your experience. You can go watch it and be like, I know what's gonna happen, because you know what's gonna happen the second you boot it up. Anyways, it's not like a complicated plot. So
I think that's actually a solid, fair point. I think out of all of the films we've watched, this one, like, even if we spoiled everything for you and you went and watched it, I mean, chances are I think you'll really enjoy it. Granted, there's probably going to be some people that think, like, okay, this movie's dumb and stupid. But again, if you're up for, like, just something really fun, this is like creme de la crop,
Yeah.
This is super fine. So, yeah, definitely if you don't want to know what happens and you kind of want to be surprised with all the goofs and gags that happen throughout the film, definitely worth watching. And I will say, probably out of all the films we've watched, this might be the least scariest, I would argue.
100%. Yeah, I can't remember a scary moment in this film, if there was one.
Yeah, like, they would do some jump scares, but they weren't really scary per se. It was just kind of like broad daylight a lot of times the jump scares would have. But again, I don't even see that as a downside. It's like, while I do kind of consider this a horror, like, portion-wise, it's majority, like, comedy, dark comedy sort of thing, like, medieval fantasy sort of thing, with, like, bits of horror, sprinkled with horror.
It's like, it's like kind of in the realm of horror. Like, there are horror tropes and elements, like Army of the Undead and skeletons and Necronomicon and ghosts and shit, but, like, it's not like a scary movie. Like, I'd still call it a horror movie, but it's not a scary movie.
Yes, I think that's definitely a good word for it. So I would even just recommend this film because, again, like, while I do think that, I do really respect and like the first two films, it's those two films are definitely more scary than this film. If you were just wanting to avoid being scared altogether and just kind of wanted to watch something and get an idea for Evil Dead franchise, I think this is honestly the best spot because it even just retells the beginning of the story in like about like a minute there. So you could go watch this and be perfectly fine. You will be confused on why exactly he's going to the past.
Maybe,
But even then, it doesn't really explain it too much.
I don't really remember exactly why he's sent to the past.
He basically, in Evil Dead 2, in order to get rid of the Deadites, he has to recite this passage, which somehow opened a portal and sucked him in, but also sent him back to the past.
He was also sucked in.
But why is it sending the evil back to the past? Who the heck knows?
Right, that's it. Doesn't really answer.
I think question. Sam Raimi just loves doing random freaking endings that nobody will be able to guess in a billion years. Because, if it wasn't for that one Easter egg of like, oh, they say there's this champion that freed people from the Deadites, wonder who that is, the very Ash Williams shaped looking like figure there. Like, at that point you're like, I knew he's going to back. But other than that, complete blindness there.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that basically describes it perfectly. So make your choice on whether you want to hear us talk more about it or go out and watch it for your own. But please, Aaron, let me know what you rate Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness. Comedies are always awkward for me to rate on a scale because, you know, comedies are by nature always going to be enjoyable. Do I give it a 10 because it made me laugh a lot? No, you know, there are definitely, there's definitely, I feel like you have to add in a little bit of substance on top of the laughs to elevate a comedy to a 10. I do think there are 10 out of 10 comedies out there, don't get me wrong. Something like Airplane, for example. The story is stupid, but it's just such a classic gag. I don't even know that I'd give Airplane a 10 out of 10, actually. But it's definitely up there, though. It's funny. Every line is gold. It's just it's just a goofy good time. This one, I feel like it was just goofy. I don't think any of the lines were like that clever. I mean, some of the lines were pretty clever, but most of the time when you're laughing, it's not because like that was a good joke. It was like he just said something really dumb, you know. And there's value to that. This is a good movie, but I feel like it is all sort of all style and no substance, really. I do think the style is elevated compared to something like the first Evil Dead, and a lot of that comes with budget and experience, I'm sure, from Sam Raimi. But overall, yeah, it's just it lacked, you know, while Evil Dead 2 had like a substance and a story and some interesting stuff going on there along with all the goofy shit. I did think I really liked that maybe more than just straight comedy. Although it was nice and refreshing, this is definitely what I'd want to put on if I don't want to have to really pay attention to what I'm watching, or I just want something light, or I'm going to be drunk or high or something and like watching a movie. I put this on versus, you know, putting on something else that I have to pay attention to. There's definitely a time, you know, and a place. You don't always have to be watching fucking Gone with the Wind every night or some shit, Citizen Kane, you know, like, but this is like in the hierarchy of like quality movies. I don't think this one was trying to be art, but it also just didn't succeed in that either. It's comedic art. It was very funny. There's so many great effects to enjoy, great goofy moments to enjoy. But like, yeah, is it an amazing film? In some ways, sure. In other ways that are required for how I rate movies, probably not. So overall, I give this like a 6 out of 10. It's funny. It's a good time. I would recommend it. It's an above average movie, but really, all it has going for it is goofy and campy and cool effects is really the three things that hit for my list, and then everything else is kind of like, you know. So that's sort of where I stand on the movie. I enjoyed it a lot, but it's not like a horror masterpiece for me, you know.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair, and I think that's usually like a lot of like people's draw is like, you know, again, they really just enjoy kind of the horror subtleties there, whereas I think horror takes a backseat to this film. So it's like one of those opinions that like I totally understand and respect that there. I don't know what it is about this film, because like even whenever I watched it the first time, I wasn't expecting what Army of Darkness was. Again, just how goofy and over the top it was, and it just hit me at that moment. I'm like, this movie's just great. It just was one of those things that it was great the first time, and each subsequent rewatch it gets greater and greater. Now I will say I struggled really, really hard throughout this film, because I was thinking, is this film a 10 out of 10 for me? And as much as I love this film, I struggle putting it right out of 10. It's just one of those things that there's a few things holding it back. Granted, I do feel like this film was made for me. Like, I feel like, you know, if I, like, here's $10 million or whatever, make me a movie, I'd be like, I love it!
Right.
You know, sort of thing. But there's just little things that do kind of add up a little bit there, that in the back of my mind, you know, thinking the film critic in me, which obviously is not as big as, like, you know, your film critic, because, you know, I just care about enjoying the movie and what it has to provide. It's entertainment there, but also in the back of my mind, it's like, I wish they would have done this instead of that. Like, it's just like me kind of playing director in chair, and there was just enough of it to where I don't know. I just feel weird giving it a 10 out of 10 as opposed to something like The Shining, where I feel like The Shining is like, yeah, I feel like it's flawless.
Sure, yeah.
It's like flawless. It just perfect there. I feel like this is the perfect film for me. But with that being said, like, easily like a 9, even 9.5 is exactly where I'd rate Army of Darkness. It's one of my favorite films of all time. Aaron described it perfectly, where, you know, sometimes it can be exhausting a lot of the time to watch movies like something like Citizen Kane, you know, where it's heavy, has a lot of substance, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a wonderful film, you know, Citizen Kane. It's just one of those things that, for me, this is like the perfect film to unwind with. Yeah. Just kick back, relax, you know, and enjoy it. And again, I do feel like there's a lot of value in that, in the fact that it can be a film that I can watch multiple times. Like, I don't know how many times I've watched it. I must have watched it at least 5 or 6 times, and I can clearly see myself watching this even more in the future. It's comfort food. It's perfect, and it's perfect for me. It's not a perfect film. I mean, granted, you know, you can argue like, oh, there's no such thing as a perfect film, but this is like my film, you know, kind of like how I imagine this is probably how you feel about like the Thumb movies. Like, you know, it's like your kind of film that you enjoy there.
They're just goofy.
Yeah,
it feels, this is my kind of humor. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But obviously you wouldn't herald it as like cinematic masterpiece. But it's just like your films. And it's like, this film is like my film, like one of my comfort foods, one of my like top favorite films of all time. Like, easily put it up there. I haven't compiled a list yet. That kind of scares the crap out of me doing so, but it would easily be like maybe top 20, if not certainly top 50 films of all time. Like, easy peasy there. It's just a film that I will continue to rewatch. I will herald it as just one of my favorite films of all time, and I'm super duper happy that we got to watch it, and that at the very least you got some real good enjoyment out of it. That just makes me feel good. And again, this is one of the main reasons I wanted to start this podcast. It's like, I want Aaron to watch Army of Darkness because I love that movie.
I see why. It's definitely, it's got a unique shine to it.
Yeah, but we'll definitely talk about some stuff that I'm not as crazy about there, and why it kind of chips it down to like that 9.5. Again, like, if I could only give it like a 9 or a 10, I'd probably give it a 10. I'd be like, screw it, it's a 10. But realistically, just critically thinking, I'm like, if they had done this, like the tiniest changes, tweaks, and everything, it'd be perfect. But as is, it's still freaking awesome, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're going to be talking about spoilers there. Like I said, I apologize for all the gushing. I'm going to have to clean up the carpet afterwards, just doing it everywhere. But we're going to talk about spoilers. So obviously, I will let you speak first on what spoiler you want to speaketh.
Oh, man, I love that scene where he's like fighting all the little mini versions of himself.
Oh, so good. So good. And it came out of left field for me the first time I watched it. The only inkling that I ever had about him fighting mini-me's is if you look at the poster right there.
Oh, there's a little dude.
Yeah, there's little dude stabbing him with a fork and a match there. And I looked and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then whenever he broke the mirror and they popped out, I'm just like, that's just a fun, cool idea. I think that's just more of the gags that Sam Raimi got to do. Because, again, I love seeing those, like, little mini gags, especially in Evil Dead 2. Just, like, doing random stuff like that. I'm like, that's fun.
Yeah, that whole, like, 15-minute stretch was just nonsensical, where he's attempting to enter the graveyard of the dead to get the book or whatever.
Yeah, he like enters that windmill there.
Yeah, he like gets chased into the windmill, and then he has to fight all the little mini versions of them, and he like one of them goes down his throat after they tie him down, and he has to like try to get it out with hot water, but then it grows into a second version of himself, and he finally beats it, chops it up, buries it. It's just like it's just wacky, and then that turns out to be kind of the bad guy. But...
Yeah, I definitely was surprised whenever that happened. And I'm like, okay, this is the antagonist, because really, whenever it came to like the evil dead and all the deadites there, you never really see like from the camera's perspective what's chasing Ash, and you never do. But I really love that you don't see it. But now we kind of have like kind of a manifestation. I mean, because in Evil Dead 2, probably the main antagonist was like the possessed Henrietta there. But now this feels like more like even more antagonist, just evil Ash.
Right.
As it were. And I just love how they came across it. Because they could have just done something simple and just be like, all of a sudden, like, the Evil Dead has manifested itself to look like Ash. But they go through such heavy strings and paths just to get to that point of evil Ash. Because, you have all the mini-me's running around there. And may I just say, like, the slapstick is just Three Stooges inspired heavily. Like, they had hints of it in Evil Dead 2. Obviously, I made, like, an observation that they're called like fake shimps, like the people that were dressed up as deadites because they didn't have a name for it at the time. But it's just pure comedy gold. Like, again, Ash like tripping, having his face stuck on the furnace, and he has to get like the little like coal scooper to scoop his face off.
His face off.
And it's just a bunch of gags, and then like I said, it's just like, one of them jumps in her mouth, which again, I love that they show it. They show it all, and for the time especially, it's great thinking on how they achieved all of the effects there. But again, like, and drinking the hot water as well. They could have easily just like ignored it, but just the fact they're like, oh, it'd be funny if like, Ash grabbed oh my gosh, I'm already smiling thinking of the words like, ha! You want some hot chocolate? Just doing that, and you hear the screaming like,
how'd that taste?
Yeah. And then he's like scratching his shoulder, and then he like pulls back his shirt to see like an eyeball blinking on his shoulder, and he's running out screaming, get this thing off me. And like slowly over time, another Ash is growing on him, and they separate apart, and I just love like, who are you? He's like, I'm you.
The evil Ash.
Yeah.
I'm bad Ash. You're the good Ash.
Little goody two shoes, little goody two shoes. And so then like they're fighting, and then it just leads to, again, one of the magnificent one-liners after he pulls out his shotgun, shoots him in the face, and he's like, good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun.
Yeah.
It's just so goofy. And so then he takes his now, shot body, which you think, okay, he shoots him in the head, he's done, right? No, he drags it back to the windmill, chops him up into little itty bitty pieces, wraps him in like a bag, and throws him in the grave, and, puts a cross, and it's done. And again, they take so many like liberties to be like, wouldn't it be funny if this happened? And they go with it, because like, whenever he throws it in, Ash, the evil Ash is taunting Ash, being like, I'll get you. Yeah. He's like, you got something on your face. He's like, and it just dumps dirt on him. It's just fun stuff like that. But not only that, so you think like, okay, that's done. That was a funny haha thing. But no, it's like later whenever he receives the Necronomicon, which I know we'll definitely talk about the gags there, evil Ash is brought back, and again has a whole design where like his clothes are like, you could tell that's been cut up, stitched up, and his face is super mangled and everything. It's just cool how they take so many steps in order to get to that point, as opposed to like, oh, I'm evil Ash, just like, here. So I love the creativity they take whenever it comes to getting that point. And I feel like overall, I'd be lying if I said, oh, Evil Ash is one of the best horror antagonists.
Nah.
He's all right. He looks cool. He does the part he needs to there. But again, I feel like it's Ash the movie.
Right.
That's why you're watching it. That's the fun thing. And I feel like just for an antagonist, he does the job just fine. You know, he looks cool and everything, but, you know, I'd be lying if I said, oh, he's such a deep character. He's just a goofy deadite.
He's goofy, yeah. He has some Ash qualities of being goofy, too. And he's just trying to raise some dead boys to get his book. That's all he wants.
Yeah, definitely. The deadite designs there didn't instill the same fear in me as the older ones did, but I think it's just because, again, of all the tone and everything else. Because I mean, definitely, like, if I was a little kid and I saw some of the designs, yeah, I'd definitely be scared. It's scary looking, but it's not. I didn't get scared watching it.
No,
it's just very horror-esque.
Yeah, and that's where I do think, the second movie definitely achieved, like, it being funny and goofy, but still having that scary tension, and this one was just, like, all funny, and whenever you do that, it's hard to even be scared, even if they wanted you to be in a moment or two, because you're just used to laughing the whole time.
Yeah, because even at the beginning, whenever Ash is, like, brought to, like, the castle there, and, you know, they throw the one guy into the pit, and you see that hysterical geyser of blood, like, shoot up, which is about the only blood I'd probably say you really see in this film. Everything else is pretty much covered.
People get, like, scratched up and stuff a little bit, but, like, no, it's not. That's the only time you see blood, and it's like an enormous, ridiculous amount.
Yeah, and then, like, whenever Ash, like, falls into the water and is having to fight the deadite, you know, it's like just a tense action scene. I wouldn't say it's like horror scene where I'm like, oh, holy crap, this thing's trying to get me. It's just kind of like regular fight. And again, like, I think the strength that Sam Raimi went into this is he knew this wasn't going to be just like, oh, I'm going to make a horror masterpiece. Because he's having these deadite do these backflips, side flips, doing these crazy freaking moves there. And it's just like, okay, this is just really silly. But speaking of silly, it leads up to that hysterical moment where the wise man's like, here, take this. And he throws down the chainsaw and Ash jumps up and you hear like the click as
he onto his nub.
Yeah, and then gets starts it up and it's just like cutting through everything. I mean, it's just, oh my gosh. And again, it's just like one of those like funny, like over the top action moments that I love. And one of the things that's like in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, this is dumb. There is no way that should work, but it makes me laugh every time. Is the belt grab?
I was just thinking about
that perfect belt grab. Indiana Jones wishes he had that amount of skill to whip his belt perfectly around the chain and keep it tied up as he goes up. Which again, that's like one of the things in my mind. I'm like, okay, could they have not done that any differently? But another part's like, nah, leave it.
And I love that how unnecessary it was too, because he could have just grabbed the chain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we just saw he has like a 10-foot vertical or something, because he like leapt out of the water to connect his hand to the chainsaw. And he could have just grabbed the chain, but instead he takes the time to take off his belt and do a perfect whip, and it holds him up and another dead person that's holding onto his ankle while he's like kicking him off. And
oh my gosh.
It's like, yeah. I guess if I had the ability to do that, I would do it too. Just show off.
It's just so goofy, and I love it.
Yeah.
Man, it's just so fun. And again, that's one of the things that sits in the back of my mind. I'm like, they could have done something different, but also like I'm gonna give it a pass, you know, just because of how over the top and ridiculous it is. And so whenever he climbs out of the pit there, and he's like, yeah. Who wants some? Like, I love just how deranged he is at this point. Like, he's just done.
Fight someone else. Yeah.
He's just done being treated like trash the entire time. He's had like the worst night of his life.
Yeah.
Going through. And that's one of the things that did bother me is like whenever, you know, Lord Arthur's like, you know, I'm going to fight you. After, of course, he releases Henry the Red, because everyone listened to him, surprisingly, very easily there.
Right.
He's just like, let him go. And then it's just like, and I guess Lord Arthur didn't say, like, no, hold him there. But also, I do just love that scene of, like, Henry the Red, like, getting cocky and just, like, laughing at people's faces. He's like, thank you.
Right.
And just, like, riding off in the distance. It's just, it's dumb. It shouldn't have happened, but it's funny. And so that's, like, another one that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give it a pass there.
Right.
But whenever it comes to Lord Arthur, like, challenging Ash, and Ash just shoots the sword
Yeah.
out, the thing that gets me, and don't get me wrong, I love it, but the entire time he didn't have his gun on him.
Right.
And I don't know where the hell it came from, if the wise men somehow gave it to him off screen, or if he magically got it. And again, like, I think it does that to the comedy that you're not expecting it, because you don't see the gun, and the gun is there, but that was just one of the little things that I'm like, that could have been done a little bit neater at the very least. But at the same point, it is kind of that shock value of just seeing, like, the, you know, sword get hit with the bullets there, and because you're not expecting it.
It's also funny that he shoots like 3 or 4 shots and never reloads, but in that scene alone. And yeah, it's a double-barreled shotgun. It doesn't have a magazine. There's 2 shots, and then you have to put 2 more shells in. But he doesn't do that often.
Yeah, no, and I get it. I understand why, because it's more action-paced, but it is one of those things that sets you back. You're like, that shotgun shouldn't be shooting that much. I
think at some point in college, I just started counting shots every time. There's like 2 weapons that are real easy to tell how many shots they're supposed to have, and it's like, you know, revolvers, they always have 6 shots, or shotguns, you have 1 or 2 depending on how many barrels they got loaded in there. And just so frequently when you watch them, especially a campy, silly, goofy movie like this, or just an action movie, it's like, there's no more bullets left. You're supposed to reload now. But when you start looking for when people reload, it's funny, because people almost never reload unless it's time for some exposition, and then they're like behind cover, and they're like, what is that thing? You know?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm about to faint. I'm laughing so much during this episode. Yeah, it's definitely goofy, and it does lead up to, like, the iconic line, as you knew, like, this is my boomstick. And I love that they added the purposeful flair that's never brought up about what Ash's career is. Right. That he works at, like, a
hardware store.
Yeah, like, basically like a Walmart there, you know. He's like, shop smart, shop S-Mart.
Yeah.
Were you like surprised that they took the moment during the recap where it showed Ash, like, what he did as a job?
I felt like they were going to make it relevant somehow, because they spent 2 movies not saying what he did, and then they said what he did, and I was like, that's either just like a throwaway goof thing, or it's got to be relevant somehow.
Yeah, and it does lead to, like, the iconic line where he's just basically glorifying the shotgun there, just, like, going over everything. I'm not even going to attempt to say it, because I know I will butcher it, but it's just one of those lines that I never get tired of hearing. It's just
all those 1300s peasants to shop S-Mart.
It's so goofy. It's so goofy and doesn't make sense, but also at the same time, that's one of the few moments I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. Like, it's just funny that he feels the need, like, shop smart. Shop S-Mart.
And it does definitely reinforce, like, what the audience should know at this point, but just in case somebody was naive, is like, this movie is goofy, it's aware of it, the dialogue is meant to be just erratic and off the wall.
It's funny because, Dave Dr. Shock Becker, I believe I listened to one of his podcast episodes he was on, and he said he took his wife to this movie on a date because he got to choose the movie, and she's like, what the hell is this? And like is not a fan of this movie per se with how goofy and over the top it is.
Yeah, I could see if you're like actually looking for a narrative experience and you get taken to this movie, you might be let down. But if you're looking for a good time, or if you're just looking for a goof, then I would be happy if somebody took me to this movie.
Yeah,
I'll marry you, Dr. Shock.
Well, I will let you know they did work out for him. They are,
Okay.
they
worked through it.
It wasn't
That's
a
good.
deal breaker.
It's good.
Back whenever they watched it in theaters back in like '93. Oh my gosh. Oh, but it's just goofy and oh my gosh. There's so many. I'm still gushing. I apologize, but
Gosh.
I love how the scene just follows up also with like Ash being like fed by beautiful women there.
Yeah, he goes from being like a slave that they attempted to execute to, laying down, getting fed grapes by the handful. Yeah.
It's just so comedic and over the top there. And again, it does lead to like the issue with Sheila where basically she's distraught because her like lover died in battle by one of like Henry the Red's men, and so she assumes that it was Ash who did it. Which I love the entire time, like, everybody's beating up on Ash, including little Journey. He's like, get off of me, you little bastards. You know, like, doing that, and then she's beating him up there. And then, all of a sudden, she turns a new leaf and says, like, I'm sorry, I mistook you for one of King Henry's men. He's like, first you wanted to kill me, now you want to kiss me. Blow. It's just so douchey, but so hysterical at the same time. But it's just so ridiculous how quickly the turnaround is. And again, how much of a douchebag he is to her.
Because then she comes a second time while he's working in the stable, whatever. He opens the door and he's like, well, are you raised in a barn? Close the damn door. She's like, I made you this. He's like, oh, yeah, I could use a horse blanket.
And then she just gives a very much deserved slap to the face there. And then, you know,
and
like...
that's when he's like, oh, that's my kind of woman.
Yeah, it's like he goes up and grab her, and then they just both stare into each other's eyes. He's like, give me some sugar, baby. He just goes in for the kiss. It's just... Oh,
I feel like
so
the whole
goofy.
time there's probably just like two people just drinking, writing the script. Like, all right, and then they just one take. They didn't ever look at the script again. They just passed it out to people afterwards, and they're like, "This is what we're making."
Oh, it's just so goofy, and it's like if it was any other film, it would be a major detriment. But because this film establishes what it is, it just flies through perfectly.
Right
there. It's so goofy. And again, like just the fact that like again, like whenever Ash agrees to help them find this Necronomicon there, because it's also the way to get them back home, that somehow the blacksmith is able to create this Anakin Skywalker mechanical hand, basically, to where he's able to control it. It's goofy, but also I do understand why they did it, because it's like, it'd probably be nice if he had another appendage at work as opposed to lumping around a chainsaw for a hand.
Right. Having two hands would be nice.
Yeah, and that's like one of the issues I actually picked up on watching it, and was one of the things that I'm like, okay, hold the phone here real quick. Because whenever he gets a hand, he stops using the chainsaw and shotgun. He never uses it the rest of the film. And you could say like, well, he's out of gasoline or he's out of buckshot, basically. But they don't say anything about it. They just really don't focus on that. Because there was several situations where it could have come in handy. Granted, I think he uses the gun a couple of more times, but I never see him use the chainsaw.
True. He doesn't use the chainsaw again, I don't think. And the times he uses the gun are really stupid. Like, he shoots it in the air one time to get people's attention. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's a badass moment. I'm gonna let that slide.
I don't even need this weapon.
And it's one of those things that I was like, I wish they would have incorporated it more, but again, I don't feel like the story is like ruined because like, where's the chainsaw action and stuff. But I just think there could have been like even more creative stuff they did, because for the most part, whenever Ash fights on later on, like after he stops using his gun, like later, I think the last time he uses it is to shoot evil Ash in the face. Oh wait, no, it's not actually. It's do like the firing shot to grab people's attention at the end.
Yeah.
I think that's another time. So it's like very inconsistent on how many times he uses it, as opposed to like the previous film where that was like his livelihood. He's like, I need this chainsaw, I need this shotgun to help save me. And it's one of those things like I would have liked to see him use a little bit more stuff, but as is, I don't think it hurts the film.
No, I mean, and that's one of those things where, there are like a million little plot holes and logic things in this, but it's all covered by the blanket of comedy. They're like, it doesn't matter. This is a goofy movie, and you're just like, cool, doesn't matter.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And so, I just feel like whenever it came to some of the fights were super fun. Other times they were kind of like, okay, like whenever they have the Deadite like attacking Ash in the castle after he's like been welcomed as a hero, basically. I thought that fight was perfectly fine. Again, just was like a little action scene there. But again, it's not one of the scenes I always like, ooh, yeah, this is a fun time there. It's just like, yeah, that's a good scene, throw in there. But whenever he goes off on the before he goes on the journey, whenever the wise man says, whenever you grab the book, recite these words, Klaatu Varata Nikto.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is a reference to the day the Earth stood still.
Oh.
I still need to watch the movie, as embarrassing as it is there, but that's like actual words that they say, like, oh yeah, they had the words Klaatu Varata Nikto. And so whenever he's repeating it, and he's like, repeat it again, he's like, I got it.
I know your damn words.
Yeah. Did you know as soon as he said that, he would forget?
I wondered if it would be important again. I don't know. I didn't like click in because I knowing this movie, they could have just never brought that up again.
True. Very, very true with that.
But as soon as he stepped up and he was like, oh yeah, you have to say the words, I was like, oh, he's not going to know them.
It's such a funny gag. It's such a funny gag. Like, even every time I see it coming, I still laugh. And even hearing him be like, I got it, it just makes me laugh knowing that he does not have it.
I think what made me laugh so much is I'm sure this had to be intentional. And it's an old enough movie that I was wondering if he was going to say something he really shouldn't have said. But he remembers the first two words, and then he starts trying to say the last word, which begins with N, and he's just like, and he's like, it's an N word, I know it. And he just keeps saying, he keeps using the phrase N word, and I'm like, oh my god, is he gonna say? And then there's a part where
is he gonna say it?
Yeah. Well, in that part where he's like thinking and he like hatches a plan in his head, and then he says like the first two words, and then he goes like just to pretend like he said the word. I thought he was just gonna say the N word. I was like,
you're just like stressed, like sweating.
It's probably just because it was a Universal Studios film that Bruce Campbell isn't canceled for.
Come on, it's Ashley J. Williams, not Kramer.
That's true.
It's been a while since we made a Kramer joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, just dust that one off.
Hey, did you see that the AI?
Yes, the AI Seinfeld.
Seinfeld got kicked off of Twitch for making a transphobic joke.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Kramer lives.
Give it to AI to get good, so give it to Dave Chappelle.
I know.
Grammy nominated, baby.
I was about to say, yeah, they probably just plugged in the Dave Chappelle album. That joke, honestly, I feel like Twitch streamers have said worse and not gotten a ban for it. But
yes.
Anyway, that's a different topic.
Yes,
but,
we're definitely getting derailed massively.
If you look at the whole joke in context, though, it's even funnier though because he's the whole time he's talking about how everybody's leaving and nobody's listening to him.
Yes,
it's like a sad comic like making transphobic jokes that nobody thinks are funny. And I was like, that's a good bit. I don't think anyway.
Yeah. Anyways, that's a whole ball of stream for another stream.
Anyway.
Yeah.
This movie.
Yes, I love the way they go about it. And I will talk about like the 3 books, but I mean I gotta talk about the Klaatu, Verata, and Nikto thing. It's just it's so funny, and even though I know he doesn't remember it, the way Bruce Campbell, they're not like, oh my goodness, I forgot. They really just, he focuses in on like, and you believe he's forgotten it, and he's just like, necktie, nickel. Like, he's just going through, like, you see like the steam coming out of his ears, just realizing, oh my god, I did not remember the lines. And so then he just doesn't know what to say. It's just, and again, just that whole scene is perfect. That's like one of the things that's so perfect. And again, just the sheer idea. Again, I love the depth of Ashley J. Williams to be like, if I just bullshit my way through this word, maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
And so he's like, Klaatu, Verata, and he's just looking around like, yeah.
I said the words, right?
Yep. And
Y'all heard it.
And again, whenever he grabs the book and everything is clearly falling apart, tombstones are flying in the air, and he's just like, what? I said the words.
You heard him.
Yeah, like, I just love how he's just continuing with this lie that he clearly did not know.
Trying to defend himself in the
It's
face
so
of
good.
evil.
It is such an ingenious moment in the script, just to double, triple, quadruple down
Yeah.
on just the fact he didn't know the words, he messed up, and whenever he talks about it later, it's just, oh, it's so good. Like, whenever he gets back to the castle and, the wise man clearly sees something bad's going on. And he goes up and he's like, do you have the book? And he's like, yeah, I have the book. And he's like, now, when you retrieve the book, did you say the exact words? Yeah, I did. Did you see it exactly? He's like, well, not maybe exactly every little syllable.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just... It's so funny. It's so funny. And then once the wise man's like, oh my god.
Right.
You just could not remember the 3 words. I told you. It's so funny. It's so funny. Speaking of funny gags, I love whenever they go up to the graveyard, it's not just one Necronomicon there. It is 3. And he's just like, 3 books? No one said anything.
And I love that he just says his internal dialogue out, like internal monologue out loud, which is what the audience would be thinking too. It's like, like you see the 3 books, and as the audience member, you're like, oh well, shit. What does he do? Does he just grab one at random, or does he take all 3? I mean, come on. And then he says out loud, he's like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Do I just take 1 or all 3? Like, he's just like,
it's so funny the way Bruce Campbell's able to deliver those lines there. Because again, we're used to Bruce Campbell in the first 2 films usually just being quiet because there's no reason for him to talk. But we're at the point where it's so over the top and absurd that it just naturally fits in that he speak out loud. He's like, 3 books.
right.
No one's told me anything about 3 books.
Right.
And I just love how he goes through each one and it does like something crazy, like whenever it stretches his face and fingers, and they focus really hard because those are really good prosthetics, mind you. Like, they just look genuinely good, because there were some moments, like even with Evil Ash popping out, where I'm like, okay, that's clearly a head flopping on there, back and forth. But this was just genuinely like, wow, holy cow, that's really good prosthetics there.
Yeah.
That really makes his face look like it's stretched out, and he has this whole like sort of, again, like a Looney Tunes character, just shaking it back to normal.
It's a little Space Jam moment.
Yes, for sure. And then of course, like the other like Necronomicon like biting his fingers. But the joke I love about it is even before he grabs it, he's like going for that one, then he's like, nah. And then he swaps back to the other book, and he's like, oh, like, oh, I better not do that. I bet it's this book, and it's not that book. It's just so funny. It's super funny. And whenever he does like get the Necronomicon and everything starts falling to hell, I love that there's just an extended definitely, admittedly, very long scene of him getting slapped silly by skeleton hands.
Yeah,
It's just so goofy. And
ridiculously elongated with like Three Stooges gags. They do the fingers in the eyes, and he blocks it with the hand, and then two fingers come separately and poke him in the eyes.
Yeah.
They grab his tongue.
it's just so ridiculous and goofy, and it goes on for like a long time, because I was sitting there and I'm like, this scene's going on for a long time, and then I'm like,
way too long.
and then I'm like, it's funny as hell. Who am I kidding?
I feel like that in the timeline it was like, all right, that's good, and then it kept going, and you're like, okay, this is silly, and then it went for so long that it became funny. Again.
Yes, that's the motions I went through. Is that little dip?
And then you're like, okay, this is just absurd now.
Yeah. They just have good comedic sense there. And so like whenever he gets to the castle and Evil Ash is resurrected there, it's just funny as something that, and then whenever Sheila's like trying to get to him, because basically Lord Arthur has said like, okay, yeah, you could go home, you coward. I don't care, we'll deal with this mess. And so he's like about to go home, and then like Sheila's just basically being like, no, I know you're better than this. And she's like, nah, I gotta get out of here. It's like, well, what about all the sweet talk? Oh, that's just what we call pillow talk. It's just so goofy, just how he turns into big, like, he's just continuing being a dick, and he's like, forget this, I'm going back. And then Sheila gets, like, kidnapped by the Deadite way too easily, and then it swipes away. Again, still impressive effects. I really like the effects, but definitely kind of a silly setup. And so then he's trying to, like, stop her and everything else. And so then, again, whenever she's taken to Evil Ash, there is definitely an uncomfortable scene where he basically forces herself on her. Definitely not to the extent the tree did.
No.
Oh no, not even close, but definitely was like hitting that barrier of like, this is slightly making me uncomfortable, because he's like basically forcing her to kiss his ugly mug. And then before you know it, there's a random ass naked woman in the front screen in chains there, and then you see that Sheila has like the top of her like dress off there.
Yeah, so I was like, oh man, okay, so the dead are like doing sex slaves now.
Yeah,
except for they're never shown
it's
again.
never brought up again, and that's like one of the things that I'm like, I could have done without that. That's personal taste.
Honestly, if I was gonna shoot that scene and we had to do, like, if he was just going for like, all right, it'd be funny because all horror movie have boobies, so we're gonna put boobies in one scene and then never mention it again. I would do like the aggressive like Monty Python, like just boobies in the screen.
Oh, like in Airplane.
Yeah, like in Airplane, where just boobies flop on the screen and just like just for one scene and then never do it again. I think that would have been comedy gold if they were just like pulling up and then it's just like and just like boobies slapping each other or something. And then never do it again. I think that would have been funny.
Yeah,
but this was just like, I was like, oh, they're doing like sex trafficking now, I guess. They have 3 living women that are half naked, and then just never mentioned. They didn't, when they beat the Deadites, they weren't rescued. They weren't like, nothing was ever brought. They weren't shown in any frame ever again.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And again, I know it might be like personal taste there, but for me, I'm just like, I could have done without it there.
Why'd they include it? Like, it wasn't really funny. It didn't have anything to do with the plot, and it wasn't mentioned again. So why was it?
It was only funny because of how out of left field it was. And again, if it wasn't for the random woman in chains, topless, walking in front of the camera, I don't think I would have like gotten a laugh out of it. I'm just like, what the heck is going on? It's funny because I never realized the first time I watched it that because somehow I missed the naked woman in front of the screen. Don't ask me how. First time I watched it, but then I didn't even realize that the top of Sheila's dress was like undone there.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the things that, and that's what kind of bumps it down from like a 10 to a 9 to me, where I'm like, I wish they could have maybe done something different with that. It just felt a little gratuitous. I mean, it definitely wasn't as uncomfortable as the tree scene in the first film.
Right.
But definitely still like, I think that could have gotten a rewrite.
Yeah, I mean, I do
'Cause-
think it's funny because it does show that he still has Ash's personality, like Evil Ash or whatever,
Mhm.
because he's like, give me some sugar, you know?
Mhm.
But they could have just cut it after that. You know what
Yes,
I mean?
for sure. I think definitely that would have been better. Because, I mean, I'm sure the idea is the fact they wanted to show that Sheila was now, like, possessed by, like, the evil dead, the Deadite there.
Right.
Which leads to that iconic line, like, I may be bad, but I feel good.
Yeah.
You know, just, again, adding one-liners there. But again, like I said, it doesn't hurt the film enough to where it makes me, like, uncomfortable. Like, it's quick enough to where I feel like it doesn't outstay its welcome there. It's just like, I probably do without that. So that's just
Right.
one of the things that just chiseling it to perfection there. You know, because like I said, I try to reserve 10s for, like, films that I'm like, I just feel like it's flawless in my eyes. But it does lead to the funny moment that, you know, whenever everybody under, like, Lord Arthur's command is panicking, and then Ash suddenly out of left field, just because he realizes I really like Sheila, he fires up, he's like, go ahead, cry home to mama. You know, and it's like, it just is so out of left field how he went from, like, screw this, I'm going home, to no, I'm gonna stay here and fight this. Like, it's
Yeah.
just so back and forth. But again, I know that's just him. He's just basically a douchebag there,
Right.
basically very self-centered. But and it does lead to, like, just funny moments. The fact that they go to the car and they have a chemistry book,
Yeah.
which
it's
again,
just
I'm willing to
conveniently.
suspend disbelief for that there.
And they have all the materials to make a lot of gunpowder.
And it just adds to, like, a funny montage scene of, like, them working on the motor.
Mm-hmm.
And just, like, montage scene getting prepared for battle. And we both mentioned, like, how does Ash know combat, you know, going hoo ha hoo,
Yeah.
you know, like doing the axe motions.
Yeah, he's teaching all these people. Like, if anybody here is an authority on medieval spear combat, I'd bet it's the fort full of soldiers that just got finished fight. But they all listen to him and his advice, which I don't try in real life in case you ever end up in spear combat, because it's like stab and then hit them with the other end and then, like, kick, and I'm like, you have a spear, you're supposed to keep them at spear's distance. That's the idea behind a spear. But
Yeah, it's just as goofy, but again, it's like one of those things, if you're willing to suspend disbelief, you'll just enjoy it,
Right.
just how silly over the top it is. But then, like, and the montage is fairly quick, which is nice. Yeah, again, they
Yeah.
don't really fiddle fart around too much with stuff. They just,
no.
like,
and they
yeah.
do, to their credit, save a lot. Like, they show what they're doing, but you don't realize what it's for until you get to the battle scenes,
Yes.
and then you see all the funny stuff that they were doing. In
Yeah,
the montage.
which I like, because obviously sometimes they reveal too much during the setup to where you're like,
Mhm.
okay, I
They're
already
like,
know what's gonna
"Oh,
happen.
They're gonna do this, yeah.
So that's definitely major props to them. And I know I've already mentioned this, like, even before I talk about spoilers, but just the March of the Dead approaching the castle, it's just great. I love the mix of puppets and live actors walking there, and again, just seeing, like, the skeletons, like, banging on their skull drums and, like, their bone flutes there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so ridiculous, and the fact that they have, like, a lot of the puppets speak to each other there.
Yeah.
It's just funny.
Yeah, the
it's-
battle's great, just overall.
Yeah, it's so good, and I love that they put a lot of money into this battle, because
Mhm.
I think just definitely the theatrics of it is one of this film's greatest strengths there.
Yeah.
Because, like, as soon as they fire the arrows that have, like, the gunpowder, and you just see explosions and skeletons flinged everywhere,
Mhm.
it's just like, this is just funny. Because especially, we've already talked about this, but they did it multiple times, but it never got old, where it would be a skeleton looking towards the direction that a projectile's coming. And again, skeletons keep the same face and everything,
Right.
and just open their mouth and they go, ah! And it's just, and yeah, and of course, like, they're still, like, the goofy moments, of Ash going like, yeah, baby. I won't do it as loud as I did the last episode. But basically, it's just funny stuff. And I do love that Evil Ash is, like, going, oh! And again, it's like that Jim Carrey level of stuff,
Yeah.
like that shock and repulsed, state. It's just so goofy, and he's just sending these skeletons off to fight, and they're just getting blown up piece by piece there. And then they finally are able to like storm the castle, and they're like pushing their things. And again, it's like a mix of puppets, live actors, and stop motion. They have that constantly with these skeletons, which I love. I can't get enough skeletons. If you're in need of skeleton film, this is probably one of the top ones.
Yeah.
One of the top films I highly recommend for skeleton action.
A lot of skeleton runtime on this baby. Yeah.
Yes, you will get the bang for your buck for skeletons here. But as soon as they're like approaching, and then of course like they start invading, it's like, oh, we're not gonna win the battle there. And then like Henry the Red is riding in, has one of the cleanest shots of him like chopping a skeleton, and it falls apart, and there's like dust flying everywhere. And I'm like, that's just cool. That's just really cool. And so they have like this big fight going on. And again, it just leads to the next over-the-top thing that as soon as the skeletons and deadites have invaded the castle, Ash breaks out his car, which is decked out Death Machine, Mad Max Fury Road level of carnage. And the skeletons are just standing there going, ah! Just waiting to be chopped up by the propeller.
Yeah, I love the actual helicopter propeller that's just like...
I have no idea. Just like, he's just like, what if we added a helicopter propeller on the front to chop up the deadites? What's a helicopter? A big vehicle spinning.
That's, a windmill? That, but metal. Get on it.
And so it's just like goofy stuff like that. And they also have the goofy moment where, all the fighting they know is useless until there's like a group of people led by the blacksmith who does the hoo ah with the spears, and they manage to wipe out the skeletons in front of them. But with this like death machine, like I feel like it goes on for just long enough. Like if it had kept on going on a little bit longer, I'd be like, okay, it might have gone just a teensy bit too long, but it was still like appropriate enough. The thing that gets me is the fact that whenever Ash sees Sheila, he's like thinking, of course, like, oh my gosh, no, I can't hit her, but doesn't register with him. Why is she here in the middle of the battlefield? But again, you could take it as like, he's just trying to quickly respond, and we need to get rid of this vehicle somehow. So he jumps out of the vehicle, and the vehicle conveniently explodes.
Yeah.
And again, there's like the whole fight against like him and her. And again, he's not even going for the kill, which is surprising considering I think it's established in the previous Evil Dead films that like once you become a deadite, you're except for the exception of Ash, now that I think about it, they're usually typically gone.
Right.
So I guess maybe because he was also a deadite that maybe he got past it. I don't know. That was a weird arc that whenever he was a deadite in Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
But that being said, I do just love the lines with it. And, and you mentioned the line where basically, she said like, you found me beautiful once. She's like, honey, you got ugly real fast. Yeah. It's just so funny. And again, it's, I'd be lying if I said it's one of the greatest action set pieces of all time, Lord of the Rings, but it's like good for this film. Yeah. It's just fun and enjoyable, and seeing them like fight each other. And again, you see Evil Ash like going for the Necronomicon there, and then like Ash fights him one-on-one there for a long time, manages to set him on fire, and then he flings off the back wall only to climb back up, and he's like all skeletal. It's just a goofy looking scene, which leads to also one of the most preposterous moments where there happens to be a catapult with a bag of gunpowder that had a fuse that just got lit after Ash dropped the torch there. And then Ash falls backwards, and Evil Ash just drops down and say like, the Necronomicon is mine.
Right, and lands right on the catapult payload just to tell him that.
You better buckle up. And he cuts the hand off the Necronomicon.
Grabs the book and
launches
him in the air.
And he's just like on like flipping backwards with the bag, and just explodes comedically Death Star style in the sky.
Yeah, I love the heptuple backflip into explosion.
Yeah, and then all those skeletons going, my tea. Right. They're just like scattering off. It's just so goofy, and I guess somehow because Evil Ash was defeated, it turns Sheila back to normal. That's another thing I felt was a little bit of a cop-out.
It's a Phantom Menace moment for sure.
Yes, for sure. But it doesn't ruin it, but it is like, okay, that's a little silly there. Again, it's just like moments there where I'm like, okay, it's a little goofy, and they jump straight to the point of like, she's okay, sort of thing, which again works fine. But and then of course they have like the cliche the cliche setup of Lord Arthur's men and Henry the Red's men like facing off against each other, looking like they're about to fight each other. And it does go on a little bit too long,
probably
there, because I mean, I'm sure you saw the fact that they would be like, you're okay,
right. Hug me, brother.
Yes, yeah, hug me, brother. Do that. But again, it does what it needs to. Grant, that would be something else I would trim down on, but overall, it's fine. And again, I do like that how the ending has it wrapped up about, Ash going to the present, which again, he doesn't really say too much as to why he does it. He gives like vague stuff, like especially towards the end, but at the moment you don't really know like why he doesn't bring like Sheila along or anything else like that. He's just like, well, gotta go, sort of thing.
Right.
But this will be an interesting point to ask. Because a lot of you folks may know, for those that watched Army of Darkness, that there's actually two alternate endings. There's the theatrical one that was released in theaters, but then there's the original director's cut. And both vastly differ from one another.
Yeah.
Because basically in the theatrical cut, the wise man tells Ash, to say the words Klaatu Varata Nikto after you drink this, and you'll be sent back to your time. And I love that it's basically transitions him. He's like, so that's how it was. I could have been king at the time.
Yeah, he's like telling one of his coworkers.
And it's just like a
S-Mart.
weird flex.
Yeah.
It's just a weird flex there.
The guy was like, did you say the words right this time?
He's like, well, not exactly.
Yes,
Not every syllable
every
there.
syllable.
And then, of course, it cuts to like a love interest is like, hey, I heard the story where you could have been king was. He's like, yeah. And then all of a sudden a Deadeye just interrupts their flirting. And it just leads to one of the goofy, I say one of the goofiest. It might be the goofiest thing where
I love it though. That part was great for me.
Yeah, because tell me, how many shots did you count?
It was at least like a dozen, and he hit like 2 of them maybe.
Yeah, because like I love that he breaks out the shotgun again and like shoots a Deadeye about to attack the girl.
It's like a, what do you call those? It's like a rifle
lever
with a pump.
action.
Yeah, lever action. Yeah, and he's just like bam, 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 and just misses all of them but the last one.
It's so goofy, and I just love again. The one-liners in this film are plentiful. If you're looking for a film with good one-liners, this is definitely top tier for that as well. But he's like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. He's like, who do you think you are? Name's Ash. Housewares.
Yeah.
And so then he gets on that like little like cart, like supply cart there, and then he's just
He like throws the thing in the air and then like gets on the
Oh
cart.
yes, he does. I forgot he throws the gun in the air.
And then grabs the gun and starts firing immediately.
It's just
while he's
so
riding the cart.
over the top. Every over the top thing you could think he does in that moment. He's like firing, and basically he's like, "I'll swallow your soul.
Come get it."
Yes, and then like shoots him, and then he has like the one cheesy line where he's like, sure, I could have stayed in the past. I could have even been king, but in my own way, I am the king.
Yeah.
And then like as he holds like the woman who's fawning over him, he's like, "Hail to the king, baby."
That's it,
Yeah, like I knew that line, but this is the build up, and it's so cheesy. And anyways, in contrast to that, the alternate ending is not quite as happy.
No.
Where basically he's supposed to take 6 drops of this potion, and basically he's falling asleep in a cave just to stay safe from anything happening. And He blows up the entrance with dynamite just to make sure it's bolted in, nobody could get in. He does the drops, and as he already takes the 5th drop, he gets distracted, forgets he was on 5, and does one extra one. And time passes by there, and whenever he wakes up in a dystopian future there, and he's like, I slept too long. So out of curiosity, which ending did you like better?
If I was rating it on like a plot scale, like how it ties up neatly, I actually like the original ending better, as like wacky and silly as it is, because it like, I think it would set up for another movie too, where he's fighting them in the dystopian future or something, and I don't know. If I was going for like lore or whatever, I would pick the original ending. But if I'm going for like camp and comedy, then the theatrical release is so much better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm kind of like in weird both camps where I like both endings just fine. I do kind of get like, oh man, he got screwed again sort of thing. And I also love in the theatrical ending, it's perceived like he might have just been telling a story about it and like elaborated on details there. Because again, it's just some weird dude working at a, superstore basically. So I also like that. So again, I'm like in both camps where I like both endings, but if I was to choose one, maybe just the over the top campy thing. And plus it ties back into the S-Mart thing again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny there, but overall, I think both endings are perfectly serviceable and just fine there. Was there... I did have one question I did want to ask, but I did want to make sure that... Was there anything else you wanted to talk about with this film?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Went step by step through this one.
Yeah, for sure. Out of curiosity, what was your favorite one-liner?
Oh, man. It might be... the honey, you got real ugly.
That was so good.
But another contender for that is where he's talking to Henry the Red at the beginning, and he's like, you've got Jack and shit, and Jack just left.
That's such a good line. Everything up to he's like, well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
Yeah.
I got news for you, pal. You got two things going on, Jack and shit, and Jack left town.
Yeah.
It's just so funny.
So good.
It's just so good. Yeah, I think that's a strong contender there. I'm trying to think of the one-liner. I think Hail to the King, baby, is a classic. Like, I think the film ends perfectly theatrically with that final line there. But yeah, and I don't know, that one might be my favorite, but they're all winners in my eyes. Everybody gets a participation one-liner trophy in my eyes. It's just all good, all fun stuff there, but yeah, holy cow, this is a fun film. Aside from like a couple of imperfections with it, I just think this film is almost a masterpiece. Like basically a masterpiece in my eyes there. And it was just a good time. It was just, and it went by quick.
Yeah.
It went by quick. It's just like kick back, relax, because we're actually recording this late. But for me, I just feel like that adrenaline rush. I'm just like, man, this is just a good time. It's just a fun, straight up good time.
Yeah.
There. So yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else I want to like gush, because usually I think of afterwards. I'm like, oh, I should say this, I should say that. But no, I mean, I think you should watch this film. That's just my personal opinion. It's just a fun film there. Just be aware, it's over the top, campy, and goofy, but as long as you're prepared for that and want that, you'll especially be very happy with that.
If you want that, you have to watch this film.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. So, wow, I can't believe we finally got to this film. It's so weird to finally get to this point after doing this podcast for like over a year and a half. So, man, it's crazy that we're finally closing the episode on this here, but
closing the chapter on that Necronomicon.
Yes, exactly. And I will let you know, in case you are curious of it, they did release a TV series bringing back Bruce Campbell following the events of Army of Darkness, although they never talk about it because Universal holds the rights and Sam Raimi doesn't have the rights. So in case you are interested in watching it, or you, the audience, are interested, I still need to finish season 3 of Ash vs. Evil Dead. It's currently on Netflix, I believe.
Oh, wow.
And I highly implore y'all to watch it, including yourself, Aaron, because again, it's like that good mix of like goofy action, and I would say definitely leans more into like horror there, but still definitely keeps like that same Army of Darkness energy. So I
Nice.
highly recommend it. So you'll have to let me know if you watch it.
Let's check it out.
Yeah, and speaking of checking out stuff for the future,
Yeah.
let's get ready for some teasers.
Yeah.
All right,
Let's
so
get it teasing in here.
and this next film is also going to be a sequel.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm choosing a sequel so soon after another sequel is that this film sequel that we're watching is receiving the latest sequel in theaters in March.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, it's coming out in theaters. It'll be the 6th installment in theaters, but this one is going to be the second one that we haven't watched yet.
Sheesh. If only I knew about
And-
what movies were coming out.
Ooh, and I will also mention this. You were super close to guessing it correctly the previous episode whenever you were guessing Army of Darkness.
Oh, really? Okay, that ruins my guess. I was gonna say the second Alien, but I was wrong.
Nope. There.
Man, which ones?
And also tends to be horror with little tiny bits of a jokester. Little bits of comedy there.
We already watched the second Nightmare on Elm Street.
And it's definitely the second one. Came out in the 90s, I believe.
Man, why am I blank? Oh, Scream 2.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
Scream 2. Yes.
Okay.
I figured the best way to celebrate the release of Scream 6 in theaters was to check out the sequel. So definitely stay tuned for that. And thank you all so much for listening to this episode. And we'll see you all again next time when we're popping the scary with a Scream 2.
2 Screams?
Two
boys.
screams. Oh, yeah. Lots of screams. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.